Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Bacon. I'm the chairman and founder of Oxford Leadership. We run the leadership development in the corporate universities of some of the biggest companies in the world. One of the things in leadership that I've discovered, actually not just about leadership, I think in life, there are two things that we have to master to be able to progress, to do well: context and choices. And let me start with the second. At the end of the day, it's going to be the choices that you make that will determine where you will end up. You know, make good choices. Make good choices in your marriage, make good choices in your diet, make good choices in your business, and make good choices about the way in which you lead. Increasingly, however, in an environment like we're in, the COVID environment, the uncertainty, the unpredictability, the massive headwinds that are coming at it, what's going to happen with the economy, and not the least being all of the psychological factors that throws up in regards to customers and employees and colleagues. You know, how do we know what anybody is saying is what they really mean? So it's very, very difficult to understand how can you make good choices, because the mechanisms that we use for doing that is basically, well, data, one kind or another, either emotional data, sensing data, or hard data. And certainly in the technology world, you look for hard data. But let me share with you the one thing that I found raises the odds of anybody making more good choices than bad about leadership, particularly in a fourth industrial revolution, in a period of time of massive disruption and uncertainty and ambiguity. And that is understand context. And the ability that people have to more consistently make good choices than bad is their ability to understand what's really going on. So what this means, and I want to start this little very, very short talk with you about what we've learned about leadership 4.0, or leadership in a fourth industrial revolution, is largely going to be a story about context. It's about getting off the dance floor, standing on the balcony and seeing from a different perspective about what is really going on. So now let me give you some context and let me give you some background, and then I will land on some particular advice, which I hope will be helpful for you, honestly, not just in advancing your tech career and business and making good choices about technology and their deployment, but hopefully about making things better for your life. I mean, you can't separate, certainly not in my field, you cannot separate life from leadership. So let me tell you about context. I need to go back a little bit. More than 20 years ago, I created Oxford Leadership. The context of that was what you would now call globalization, but at the time was referred to as internationalization of big business. I ran and I was a strategy planner in a very, very big global marketing agency that was owned by one of America's largest advertising agencies. And what we were doing was simply all about how do you execute at a global scale for companies. And what that led to was a study on what it is that ensures effective execution globally in multiple cultures. Now, the obvious things were the challenges around that. Understand what is different from one culture to the next, from one customer group to the next, from one organization to next. So the obvious study to understand how to execute well was to study the nuances and the differences and the subtleties of organizational culture. You know what? Frankly, that didn't really reveal a heck of a lot for me, and certainly not for us. The real breakthrough came when I started to understand that what made the difference between effective execution and effective decision making as it relates to execution of plan was leadership. Why would one piece of work, one strategy be executed so well in one market and differently in the next? It wasn't the challenges of the culture, it was the ability of the leaders to be able to understand what is really going on and make good choices in the moment. So now, with that background and laying around context, I started a business that became, as it is known now, as Oxford Leadership. And largely, we are a boutique leadership consulting company that deals with the execution of plans for very large organizations. So we work with companies like McDonald's and Unilever and Maersk, the world's biggest shipping company, companies like Telefonica and O2 and Virgin, companies that have usually been around for a very long time. Now, unsurprisingly, what you would all realize that a few years ago, when in Davos, it was actually this term of the fourth industrial revolution was starting to become popularized. What we found in most of these really big companies, that there was somebody that was fundamentally turning not only their business, but their business model upside down. Somebody, somewhere or another, was doing an Uber to them. And you saw the rise then of the Teslas, the Airbnbs, the Ubers, the Netflix, the Apples, the Amazons, the Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So my interest and curiosity and that of our company started to be, how do you now do two things simultaneously? Perform and transform. How do you run your business whilst you are transforming your business without completely losing the plot? So what we initiated was a major piece of research. Now, we're not a business school, we're not academics, we're not universities. We employ a lot of academics, but I'm certainly not a professor. I'm a strategist and I'm a practitioner. So what we looked at is, where was it working? Where was digital transformation really accelerating? Where was it stuck? Who were the people, and what can we learn? Not about the technology. And I don't think you've invited me here to talk about, mastering and harnessing, major new technology platforms. My interest in this at the time, about 3 years ago, was, has leadership changed? Have the dimensions of what makes great leadership in this disruptive environment, has that shifted? Long and short of it, we came to a conclusion that no, the fundamentals of great leadership in an environment like this remain absolutely the same, because fundamentally it's about character and it's about creating context for things to happen. But what has changed was the context. And in this context, we found through this research, when we looked at the organizations that were smashing it out of the park, organizations that people like Salim Ismail, when he wrote the book called Exponential Organizations, when Singularity University started to popularize this notion of exponential organizations, which by definition, an exponential organization is one that grows 10 times bigger, 10 times faster than its peers by harnessing and leveraging organizational levers that enable that scale of growth. Now, when I first heard that, I thought, my God, that sounds like a frigging nightmare to me. An organization or anything that grows 10 times bigger, 10 times faster, that sounds like cancer. Can that be good for us? Can that be good for society? But what Salim Ismail in his book revealed, and something that I can totally clocked onto, why were they growing like that? It was not because, frankly, the technologies were that much better. That is true. But that kind of growth comes from ideas. It comes from big ideas that people buy into. The reason why people buy in Apple, and why Apple is up there in one of the, the top 10 companies, top 5 companies in the world, and not any of its Android equivalents, is because it's not because it's got better technology, it's got a bigger idea. And it's got a bigger meaning that sits behind it. And in this, I give you now the answer, which I'm going to close off in a minute. What we discovered about leadership in the fourth industrial revolution, there are 6 keys, 6 levers that smart organizations and smart leaders apply to being effective at executing in this environment. And it falls together in an acronym known as MASTER, M-A-S-T-E-R. And the big M is the one that Singularity University and Salim Ismail nailed right from the outlet. It always starts with a massive transformational purpose, which explode ideas, which expand people's mind and say, wow, I want to be part of that. There is purpose and there is meaning. And so the first factor about leading in a fourth industrial revolution is meaning. And meaning itself has 2 fundamental pillars. It's got more, but to lead with meaning means two things in particular. One, you have a clear, unambiguous, single-minded purpose that is beyond your products, and it is beyond yourself, and it's beyond your profits. If your only purpose is to make as much money as you can, as quickly as you can, frankly, good for you, buddy, but people aren't going to buy into that. It creates a sense of purpose that people buy into, and it creates a sense of belonging. A sense of purpose and a sense of belonging are the two critical factors of leadership in a fourth industrial revolution. If you get that right, that meaning acts like a kebab stick, ugly term, right? That holds everything else on your kebab together. A little bit of a Lebanese cultural cuisine lesson for you. The kebab stick comes from meaning and purpose that threads through this product, this brand, this team, this way of working, this matrix. Critical to understanding how to work in a highly complex adaptive matrix is the meaning of central purpose that drives through everything. The other 5 factors that complete the master acronym is adaptability. Frankly, you don't need me to give you a lecture on agility. You know all about that. Psychological security, that's the S. Security, safety, creating an environment in which people are prepared to take risks, willing to take risks and not get punished for them. High degrees of trust. Trust is the juice. It's the basic oxygen in the blood of every organization, certainly in leadership. And then energy, zeal, passion, enthusiasm, that's led by empathy. That's the big E, and the R in your master model to navigate the fourth industrial revolution is results, but not results, because results is always an outcome. What is the driver of results is responsibility, creating in your leadership the ability to respond. These 6 factors summarized together provided what we have learned and understood about how to accelerate growth, how to create an exponential organization right in the midst of an exponential fourth industrial revolution. So there we'll have it. Let me give you now a final piece of advice. Bring it all down to one word. How do you lead in a fourth industrial revolution? Find your kebab stick.